Hello and welcome to the Superman Power Trip of Wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Poz. With me today, again, a very special guest, buddy of mine, the absolute WCW legend himself, Mr. Lash Leroux. What's going on, Lash?
Brother, life is grand. It's wonderful. It's been a tremendous 2024 for me. Looking forward to a great 2025. How about you, my friend?
Very good. I cannot complain at all. I saw you doing even more artwork. I saw that Jesse the Body Ventura was awesome. I love that.
How about that, man? We got a little Jesse the Body Ventura, if you will, John Paz. Hey, he's coming back, man. Jesse's hot again.
I love when people do the impression. They always do the head. You know what I mean? That like
Yeah,
he does. Yeah.
That's how you know that I'm telling the truth, John Paz. Just because I'm not just the governor of Minnesota, but I'm a former Navy SEAL as well. And so that
Yes.
allows me to reflect upon you the truth that I'm telling because I'm nodding the entire time.
Yes. Love that he was a part of Saturday Night's Main Event, but I love the drawing as well. That was very cool.
Oh, thank you, brother. I had a lot of fun with that one, man. I'm always trying to push myself artistically, trying new programs, trying different techniques. Always trying to grow, man. I think that that's an underrated thing in life. And, we're talking about Jesse Ventura. One of the things I brought up when we did the podcast earlier, where he was the subject, man, was just the fact that you have to admire the fact that he continued to reinvent himself. He never saw himself just in that bubble of professional wrestling. He didn't need the wrestling to legitimize him for other things, and he didn't need the other things to legitimize him in wrestling.
Gotta love the body. The body
Yeah.
rules, if you will. Just love them. But what are you up to as far as drawing and stuff? Where have you been? What have you been doing?
Brother, I have been all over the United States. I've really lately been finding a special niche and doing a lot of conventions. And when I say conventions, I'm not talking about doing a Comic Con or something like that. Not that I'm opposed to it, but I mean strictly from an artistic standpoint. And in that space, I have become sort of a specialist of doing trade shows. I have a lot of companies and a lot of clients that will bring me in. We'll do week-long trade shows, and I will draw digitally on an iPad. So I'm not just doing the live caricatures like you may see at a theme park or a festival or a fair. I'm doing that drawing directly on an iPad. That's connected to a flat screen TV so people can see that from a distance. I've preloaded a template with whatever the theme is for that particular trade show, whatever the logo is, the branding is, the websites for the companies, their logos, their booth number to keep driving traffic back. And then when we print them out 4 by 6. The caricature, now your name badge is basically your caricature. You're wearing it on a lanyard around your neck, and it's become so popular at trade shows anyway. And then you add to that the dimension that a certain percentage of people are going to recognize me from professional wrestling, and that draws even more attention to their booth. And my job is to just get attention to their booth. So I still do plenty of live traditional caricatures, which is where exactly what you do see at theme parks, where I'm drawing with just a Crayola marker on a piece of blank white paper, 12 by 16, draw it really big. Boom, 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 knock it out, one face every 3 minutes. But I really like doing the digital work as well. I have a nice mixture of the two of them. And John, man, I was on the road the last 3 months constantly, and it was a busy year in general, but especially the last 3 months. And so to such an extent that I've called a lid on the rest of the year, if you will. I've had a couple of people call me about last minute Christmas parties, and I've just said, hey, I'm booked because I've had a successful enough year that I'm just finishing out the year with the family, enjoying the holidays, and looking forward to the next year, man.
Love that. When you do it with ad-free shows and you're doing Lash Can Draw, is that digital too, or is that you're doing that by hand?
That's digital, so it's very similar to what you would see me do if you saw me doing it live at a trade show. And the setup that we use for the podcast and for Lash Can Draw is the exact same setup that I'm using live. I think there's a better way to do it. And one of the things I'm looking forward to in 2025 is to be able to do it in a way that's more interactive, where people are seeing what I'm drawing on my iPad come directly up on their screen. As it is right now, it's what I like to call newscaster style, just because I'm still learning the ins and outs of the technology. But I set it up for the podcast the exact same way that I would set it up at a live event. So I have a TV right beside me, a TV screen. You can see what I'm drawing on the iPad because it comes up on the TV screen. And then when I'm finished drawing it at a live event, I would print it out right there for somebody immediately. And I'm doing a more full illustration for the podcast. So we take the entire hour to draw and to talk. When I'm doing live events, I do a caricature of somebody full color in about 6 minutes. Print it out, it's good to go, man, and it's ready to go. And generally, to make it more fun and more interactive, we place the screen, the television screen or the monitor, in a way where the person I'm drawing can't see it. Everybody else can see it, but they don't get the reveal until the very end. It's fun. It's interactive. It's sort of a performance art, not dissimilar to professional wrestling, and so I enjoy it from that aspect as well.
When you started this, where
Yeah.
did like the idea or where did the passion come from? Was it literally from WCW when you were doing Lashing Out? Is that kind of where this passion
Well,
started?
yes, and it even goes earlier than lashing out, because where lashing out started, before I even ever thought about doing live caricatures as being a possibility or a vocation or another element of what I would be able to do from a talent standpoint. Even before that, the genesis of me becoming a quote unquote professional artist really came from I always loved to draw, and I particularly liked caricatures. Um, I was a fan of all artwork growing up. I liked comic strips growing up as well. I liked comic books to a certain extent, but I was never like somebody deep in the Marvel universe or anything like that, because as cool as I thought the concept of the characters were, like a Batman and a Superman, when it came to drawing them, and look, we've all known kids that love to draw, and we've all known little boys that will trace what they see in the comic books. And that's all cool. I loved it. And I was known as the kid that could draw, so everybody would bring their drawings to me and want to impress me. And I would look at it, I'm going, yeah, that's Batman, man. It's awesome. But Batman's got a square head and not a lot of details if you're doing the comic book version. So that didn't impress me as much as, say, what blew my mind was when I first discovered Mad Magazine. Now, Mad Magazine was a whole different element, dude, because they're making fun of movies and TV shows, which meant it was very heavily caricature driven, right? For them to
Yeah.
say, this month we're spoofing Top Gun. Then I'm opening up the magazine, the comic book, and I'm looking in there, I'm going, that's Tom Cruise. I don't know what a caricature is at this point, but you don't have to tell me that's Tom Cruise. That's a cartoon that looks just like Tom Cruise. That blew my mind. That was like black magic or something to me. I was like, I've got to teach myself how to do that. So while all of my friends were copying what they saw in comic books, I was copying celebrities I saw in Mad Magazine and teaching myself this humorous aspect that was an exaggerated portrait that is caricature. So you fast forward into me beginning to wrestle, which again, I never thought would be an opportunity for me in my lifetime. But I'm wrestling in the late 90s, man. I'm cutting my teeth in WCW. I'm the youngest guy they have under contract, and we're on the road 300 days out of the year. And this is before everybody started bringing a lot of devices with them and a lot of video games. The only person I knew at that time that brought a video game console with them was Booker T. Everybody else was either playing cards or dominoes in the locker room or something, because you had to be at the building at noon in the arena for a show that didn't go live on television until 7 p.m. And it obviously makes sense. I mean, they want to make sure nobody's missed their flight. They want to make sure nobody's lost their gear or their luggage. If you have pre-tapes, you want to have plenty of time to do those. If you have local media interviews to do, you need to be able to have time to work those things out. But you're still going to have a lot of downtime. And so I got bored, and I noticed every locker room we were in had a whiteboard in it. So I bought a pack of dry erase markers, and I would draw the guys in the back. And Kurt Hennig was the one that loved it the most, man, because he loved anything that was remotely close to a practical joke on someone else. So, he'd go,
Right.
draw Hulk Hogan. and I'd draw Hulk Hogan. Now draw him really, really old with an oxygen mask and a walker. I'm going, dude, he's in the other room. He's like, he won't care, and he didn't. And everybody was a good sport about it. And I would draw these caricatures, and to their credit, people like Bill Apter and Ross Foreman and those guys, people that worked in wrestling magazines and publications, thought this would be really cool for you to do cartoons for the magazine. And Ross, I credit him completely. He came up to me and approached me first, and so did Bill Apter. I went with Ross Foreman because he was the editor of WCW magazine at the time, and I wanted to. I'm just a loyalist at heart, right? This is my home company. Why would I do it for an outside magazine if WCW is offering to allow me to do it for them? And so that's where Lashing Out came from. And so that gave me the opportunity to start growing in my artwork. And I'm just a guy that's wired in a way that you give me an opportunity like that, I'm not just going to say, all right, it's a knockoff and a novelty, and we're just trading off of my name. And as long as you put the Lash Leroux brand on it, people are going to like it because it stands out and it's a professional wrestler doing a cartoon. No, I wanted to do professional work. I was never just satisfied with that. So I literally, John, went from the very first cartoon I ever did for WCW Magazine. My first Lashing Out was a cartoon of Goldberg, and I drew him like his traps are so ridiculously large that they're covering up his ears. So he's asking somebody, "What did you say your name was?" He's signing autographs. "I can't hear you. My traps are in the way." That was the punchline. And
Love it.
so, I literally drew that on a sheet of typing paper, inked it, colored it with color pencils and markers, and took it to Bill and said, "Hey, Bill, I just want to make sure you don't have a problem with this before they publish it in the magazine." And he looked at the drawing and he looked at me and he said, "Bro, you keep drawing me that big, you can write whatever you want." And from
Huh.
then on, I never really asked anybody's permission because the ribbing I did in my cartoons was never mean spirited, and it was never taking shot at the boys. It was more of an exaggeration in a flattering way. Like somebody being overly big or muscular, or Scott Steiner trying to put a suit on and all the clothes get ripped off of it just because his muscles are busting through. Things like that to put
Yep.
the guys over. And I went from drawing that very first cartoon and handing them a hard copy that they had to figure out how to get to the magazine to, by the time I retired from wrestling and I stopped doing wrestling cartoons, and by then I was doing them for PWI magazine after WCW and doing them for the wrestler. I was doing everything digitally and just emailing in my work. And I had just taught myself over the course of about 13 years Photoshop, how to scan in my work, how to ink it first, scan it in, and then color it in Photoshop, to using a Wacom tablet and just drawing it directly in there, to now I draw directly on an iPad, man, and it's a game changer.
Love that. It's so cool. And like the evolution of it is so cool, and kind of, like Ross Foreman, WCW. I mean, it's such an interesting process of how it all kind of came together.
Yeah, it really is, and I really credit those years as a good proving ground for me, because honestly, money was not. It was more of just a throwaway of them being able to say they're compensating me, and I appreciated it. Don't get me wrong, but it was so minimal at that time, the money for my actual artwork, that I saw it more as the opportunity to grow. You're giving me a chance to be looked at as a serious artist. So I'm going to treat it like a serious job. You give me a deadline for the magazine, I'm going to make sure I don't miss a deadline. I'm going to get the drawings in. I'm going to be a professional about it. And it taught me how to be a professional artist. I really give it credit to that. In the same way that a wrestler may work on the indies for 8 to 10 years, really owning his craft and really learning how to be a ring general before he gets an opportunity on television.
When you're with Perfect, right? With Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, he's doing
Yeah.
that stuff. A lot of other ribs going on with him. Is he pulling a lot of other pranks?
Oh, a lot, man. And I had the privilege of traveling with him some as well, and the all-time best prank I've ever experienced before in my life was a Mr. Perfect prank, man. It was a great rib. We were riding, it was me, Nick Patrick, Perfect, and Mickey J, who was a referee at the time as well. You might remember him from WCW.
Oh yes.
And, and okay, we're all riding together, and Kurt and I are in the back seat, and Nick was always the wheel man. Nick Patrick, the best wheel man in the business, in my opinion. That dude had been working for so long. You could fly into a town, he'd pick up the car, and without even looking at a map, know exactly what hotel we're going to check in, because it's the same one we always stay in. He knows exactly where the building is. He knows everything, man. And you just let him do his thing. He was perfect at that. And so we're all riding together, and we finished up a show. We're driving on to the next town. It's super, super late at night. Kurt and I are in the back seat. They're in the front seat, and Mickey fell asleep in the passenger side of the front seat. And we stopped at a truck stop, and we went in to use the bathroom and to get a few snacks and things like that. And we come back out, we get in the car, and Mickey slept through this whole thing. I mean, he's snoring, he's out cold. And Kurt goes, "Hey, Nick, I saw a trucker while we were in there, man." He goes, "You see that rig right over there? Pull right in front of that rig, nose to nose. And whenever you're ready, you just turn on your headlights. We'll all scream, hit the horn. He's going to turn on his headlights. He's going to pull the big rig, and then we're all going to scream like we're about to have a head-on collision and we're on the interstate." He had set all this whole
Oh my
elaborate thing
God.
up. Yeah, and
Yeah.
Mickey's out the entire time. And he goes, and sure enough, Nick, he's cranked up the car already. He turns on the lights. He hits the horns. Meep. We're in the back. We start screaming. The rig comes on. Mickey wakes up. He's going, "Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh." I thought the guy was going to have a heart attack.
Oh
And then
my
he
God.
started
So good.
coughing so uncontrollably that Nick just chopped him in the chest to stop the entire thing. It was phenomenal. It was great.
What a great setup too. He's even, getting
Oh,
the other guy involved. My
oh,
God.
so just some strange guy that recognized him inside some trucker in the truck stop and gets him to pull his rig up, and we're just nose to nose. It was tremendous. It's
The
the middle
thought
of the night.
process. Yeah,
Yes.
thought process is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Kurt had the best ribs, no question about it. And just a funny guy all around, too. Just a really, really funny, quick witted guy. Um, Nice guy, super guy to be around. To this day, I'll never forget him going. And I didn't expect this from a Minnesota guy. He went through all of my CDs, because we all carried CDs back then. And I had one of those little portfolios that had all my CDs in it that I'd carry on the road
Oh
with me.
yes.
And he's
Yes.
flipping through them. He finds a 𝐷𝐕𝐿_𝐶 CD. And I don't know if he was just saying this or if he really meant it, but he goes, "Oh my God, dude." He goes, "Lash, this is my favorite song ever written." And it was 𝐷𝐕𝐿_𝐶_'s "Mona Lisa Lost Her Smile." And I bet we listened to that like 4 or 5 times in a row. Kurt was a great guy, and what an awesome mind for the business, and a tremendous athlete. Um, Kurt first came into the business at a time when Vince and all other promoters put a lot of emphasis on size, right? So we remember the monsters that we grew up with from the
Right.
from the 80s. Everybody from Hogan being a legit 6'7", 6'8", to guys like Bruiser Brody, to all these guys were just really, really big guys. Like, for instance, the average wrestling fan that's never met Jake the Snake Roberts would never realize how tall Jake the Snake Roberts is,
Yeah, he's
because
6'7" or 6'8". Yep.
exactly, dude.
Yep.
Because compared to everybody else, they seem short. Like people don't realize Scott Hall was a legitimate 6'9". It's because when your best friend is 7 foot tall, you look short in comparison.
Yep.
And in the same way, I always thought Kurt Hennig was like my height, was my size, because he, in that era, he bounced around the ring so well, was so athletic, was so light on his feet, that I thought he'd be about my size, maybe Bret Hart's size, maybe Ric Flair's size. That dude was 6'3", 6'4". Was a big, thick dude and could move like that in the ring. And I had a match with Kurt one time. To this day, his chair shot to me was like a magic trick. We don't see too many chair shots now in modern wrestling because they consider it so dangerous. But back in the day, you were taught to just tuck your chin, try not to turtle your neck, so that you don't get that whiplash effect when they hit you on the head. And you just have to take the chair shot. They're just going to come over the top. You try to
Yep.
stabilize your spine as much as you can, and just boom, take it. And I grew up with that. I took a lot of chair shots that way. I had a match with Kurt. I actually got the win, beat him, and then he's going to get his heat back when it's over, and he's going to slide back into the ring. And while I'm celebrating, I turn around and he hits me with a chair. And he tells me before the match, he goes, "Now, Lash, when I come with the chair, dude, I don't come over the head." He said, "I'm going to swing it like a baseball bat." And I thought, he's going to take my head off. And he goes, "No, trust me, it'll be fine." And well, it's Curt Hennig. So I trust him completely. And to this day, dude, I still, John, don't know how he did it, man. I fed right into that thing. I turned right around, never put my hand up, anything. He swung that chair like it was a baseball bat. He just came sideways with it and came in such an angle. And that thing sounded like a gunshot in the arena. It went, pow! I was so loud, the loudest chair shot I've ever heard in my life, and I never felt it. And to this day, I still don't know how he pulled that off.
That is awesome. That because I vividly remember like the way he would swing it. It just looked like vicious.
Yeah, yeah. He,
Yeah.
he he would come sideways with it, man, and
Yeah.
he'd swing his whole
Yep.
body into it, where
Yep.
everybody else came over the top. And and of course, if you're a nice guy in the business too, your tendency, whether you mean to or not, you come over the top, you're going to pull it at the end, and it always looks soft if you're not careful. That dude just brought it and never touched me, never touched me at all, and it was so loud.
Was that the only time you wrestled him? Uh,
Uh,
as far as
I
your career?
wrestled. I think I wrestled Kurt 3 times. I think twice was on house shows. That was the only time I wrestled him televised. I think. I might be wrong about that, but that was part of the tournament for the world heavyweight title. And for whatever reason, it wasn't that I was some over guy getting a push or anything, but it just happened to hit at a time when the storylines for the other guys that they put me in the ring with worked to my advantage, to where they needed the loss and I happened to benefit from the win. So I say that because, like, the first round, I want to say I either beat Kurt or I beat Ernest Miller in the first round. The second round was whichever the other one was, right? So one of them I beat in the first round, Ernest Miller, the Ernest the Cat, or Curt Hennig.
Yep.
The other one I beat in the second round. And then the third round, I got to the semifinals for the heavyweight title in WCW, and Scott Hall beat me. So that's a pretty good run. I'll take that. Uh,
Yes.
Feather and hat. And that was a great match. That's another dude, man, that for his size, you talk about someone that had great work rate and great ability inside the ring. Scott was amazing as well.
When you're in WCW at that point in '99, obviously Russo takes over, right?
Yeah.
And that tournament hits. That's basically he's kind of rewriting or resetting or redoing WCW. Basically, it was a new writer coming in from WWF, and he's kind of doing what he wants. He wants to make a brand new champion. He's setting it up the way he wants. What did you think about that reset in late '99 WCW?
I was torn, and by torn I mean this. You could tell there's a little bit of upheaval, and there were certainly some guys that had some anxiety about that. I had not been in the business long enough, just to be honest about it, John, to really have loyalties lying one way or the other. You know what I mean? I hadn't been in the business long enough to where I was concerned about who the booker was. I was concerned about whether or not I'm just getting booked. As long as
Right.
I was on the show and I'm in the mix, I felt like I was winning at that point. So I have to be honest about that. I wasn't expecting so early in my career to really be a part of some main storyline or be utilized in that way. And I was just happy to be showing up at a building and having a match that night. And to me, that was the win at that time. By the same token, the thing that did impress me and make me feel good about Russo coming in is, here's the guy coming in, Vince Russo and Ed Ferreira coming in together, and Bill Banks was with him as well. And they come in and they're all part of this little trifecta. It's going to be the new riders and the new people really spurring this thing forward. And they had a lot of momentum at their back. And one of the very first things they did was they sat down with us. And I had never been in a situation to that point in my career where one of the bookers, one of the writers, let alone the head writer, sat down with me and said, "Here's some ideas we have for you." So just that alone was extremely flattering for me. And it was hard for a young Lash Leroux in his early 20s at that point not to suddenly just feel a lot of loyalty towards a Vince Russo, just for the fact that I'm being recognized for my talent. You see something in me and you want to do something with it. So, hey, you've got me. at that point in your camp for sure. By the same token, I never had an issue with Eric at all, Eric Bischoff. I always loved working for him as well. Ironically, I probably have a better relationship with Eric Bischoff now than I did when I was wrestling. And not because we ever butted heads or anything. It was just when I was wrestling for the company, Eric had his hands full with the main event guys and the whole NWO storyline. And here I am down here at the bottom of the totem pole, which is fine, man. And so we just didn't have much interaction at all. I had interaction with all the other bookers and all the other writers. So for the head writer to come in, sit down with us and say, here's some ideas that we have, specifically speaking about MIA, and not only to share his ideas with us with the Misfits in Action, but to listen to us as we give him feedback and give him some of our ideas and creative things and questions and what directions we might be able to take it in.
Did you like that they were going to give you like a little bit of attitude? Like you lose to Disco Inferno at one point at Havoc 99, and then you beat them up after the match, which is not very Lash Leroux babyface. Like it's almost like it's a little bit of a switch went off.
You're right about that. And I'll be honest with you, though, looking back, I wish I had done more with opportunities like that. I was pretty much at that point in my career doing whatever I was asked to do and just saw it all as, you know, better than I do. And you send me out there and I'm going to do it. And I was so fresh in the business, man. And on the one hand, I see myself as extremely blessed. And I go, you know what? I was pretty good at this wrestling thing because you don't get on that level if you don't have talent and if you're not great. Certainly, there's plenty of people in WCW that were much greater than I was, but you don't get to that level unless you're a great worker and a great wrestler. They're not going to sign you and they're not going to utilize you if you're not. So I'm thankful for that, and I'm glad I had that opportunity. At the same token, though, I was so new in the business and knew so little about the business itself, not having a match, but about the business, that I just nodded and said, yes, hey, whatever you guys think is best for this storyline. And I didn't know how to take advantage of those things and make them even better than they were, or how I could input even more, or open my mouth, or go, hey, yeah, this is a great idea of doing this angle with Disco. Therefore, at
Yep.
that point in my career, the writing and the creative in my mind was more of an and. You're going to use me on this show and this show. And I get to be on the pay per view. And I get to wrestle Disco. And I get to wrestle Billy Kidman. And I get to wrestle, Rey Mysterio Jr. Whereas if you want to be a creative guy in the wrestling business, I think you got to be more about the therefores and the buts. Because that's the story driven commodity of it, right? In other words, I'm wrestling Disco Inferno at Halloween Havoc in Las Vegas. Therefore, we need a follow-up match the next night on Nitro. That's continuing the storyline. I didn't know how to politic those things at the time.
When you look at that, right? Like, okay, you're getting a little bit of a push, getting some more TV time. They're starting to use you more. When you look at it, like they're giving you a little bit of an edge. Are they kind of saying to you, like, hey, we're going to make you Corporal Cajun, or that comes later? Like they don't tell you everything that's going to happen. It's just like, hey, we want to use you more. That's kind of the gist of it? They don't tell you like, hey, months in advance, we're going to do this with you.
Yeah, nothing was much months in advance. Now, we found out about MIA and the Misfits in Action basically the first night that we started doing that stuff. You
Wow.
know,
Okay.
yeah, there was no forethought into that at all. In fact, when Vince Russo came in and he sat down with us, his pitch to us was basically this. He had us in a room, and when I say us, me, uh, Hugh Morris, Van Hammer, Chavo Guerrero, and Booker T. And he sat down with us and he goes, look, I really don't have anything creative for any of you guys, but I think that you're all very talented. And the last thing I want to do with this kind of talent is just send you home and have you sitting around at home. So here's the thing. We can either put you all together and have this idea for a group to kind of group you together and utilize you all at one time in one segment on the show, or we can send you home till we come up with something else. And of course, we're all for, hey, whatever you got for us, let's do the best we can with it. And the way it was pitched to us in the beginning was they were going to let the only serious person or somewhat serious person in the group at that point was going to be Booker T. Booker T had started his wrestling career with this gimmick called GI Bro.
Yep.
And so he was kind of reviving that and bringing it back, and he was going to sort of be the leader, the de facto leader. And he very quickly just phased right out of that because they recognized, man, he had so much talent and so much upside that it was going to be wasted and lost, stuck in our storyline. Let's bring him out here and make him more of a singles guy. And that was absolutely the right thing to do at the time. With the rest of us, they literally pitched it to us like, look, every show that we're writing has different beats to it. And every show is going to have different elements. And you have different styles of wrestling, whether it's cruiserweight style or strong style or just heavyweight guys brawling. In the same way, you're going to have different themes to each one of these matches. You may have a heavyweight title match, you may have a cruiserweight match. We also need some comic relief. So we see you guys as being the dudes from that movie Stripes in the 80s with John Candy and Bill Murray and all them. That's
Yes.
who you guys are. That's the gist of what was pitched to us. And our reaction to that was, okay, you want us to do this military kind of offshoot of a faction. If we have to wear camouflage, can it be urban camouflage? They go, oh, absolutely. So we're going to look a little bit edgier because we're wearing urban camouflage and colored camouflage instead of just bland, drab army green. That gives us a little bit of personality. And then I think I stepped forward and I said, well, look, if we're wearing camouflage, does it matter how we're wearing camouflage as long as we're wearing it so that we look like a team? We're all wearing camouflage, but can we wear it in our own way so that our character comes out? Absolutely, for sure. And so at that point, Desert Storm, hadn't been that far behind us. And
Yep.
everybody was wearing those bucket hats from Desert Storm. So I cut a hole in the top of mine and pulled my hair through the top. I thought that added a little bit of my over the top personality. And then I still wore my Mardi Gras beads, even though I'm wearing camouflage. So I give that little throwback to being the Cajun. And I remember I asked for two different color pairs of the urban camouflage pants. And then I took them to our wardrobe department and I said, could you please split these up the middle and just take the alternate colors and sew them to each other so that I've got one leg one color and one leg the other. And then I took my wrestling boots and instead of lacing them all the way up, I laced them about halfway up and took the tops of them and rolled them down so that they would kind of look like World War II jump boots. At least
Love
that's
it.
sort of the
Yep.
look I was going for. And
Yep.
then we put gloves on and, we had some we had some dog tags made and that sort of thing. And we tried to mix the elements of our individual personalities along with being just a military offshoot. And I think like Chavo, he was Lieutenant Loco, so he wore the bandana on his head and wore the wife beater shirt with his camouflage. And then you had Hugh just wore the shorts. He cut his off like they were shorts.
General erection, if you will. Yes.
General erection, if you
Huge
will.
erection.
Yeah,
Yes.
huge erection. That's the only element of that whole thing that we really felt was hard to overcome. Everything else we were able to overcome, but that was so over the top, sophomoric in its humor
Yeah.
an inside joke that I think we would have been much better off coming up with something a little bit better. But hey, we did the best we could with what we had and what we took pride in, honestly. Two things that happened that I thought were pivotal for the success of that particular faction. The first was we were meant to be nothing but humor. That's all we were. We were the throwaway ha ha gaga part of the storyline and a part of the show. And a lot of the early storylines reflected that. And we saw right away that Van Hammer wasn't a good fit for us. His
Right.
chemistry wasn't the same as ours. His attitude wasn't the same as ours. Look, you can be a workhorse or you can be a show horse in the wrestling business, right? Hammer wanted to be a show horse. And
Yep.
whatever it is that you put on him, he didn't really care about the integrity of the work in the ring. He cared about how much money it's going to make for him and what merchandising and everything else. And the two things that were killers for us was I remember our very, very first meeting with Vince. He goes, okay, if you want to do this, then we need to go ahead and start talking about t-shirts and everything. Whoa, hey, wait a second. I mean, what kind of heat are you seeking at that point? We haven't even proved we can pull this thing off, and you're already trying to strong arm them over merchandise. There's just a wrong, to
Yeah.
us, it was a wrong tone to set. And then the other thing we had an issue with, we all are given these little ha ha funny ranks slash names to go with our new military personalities, hence the General 𝐔𝐍𝐉𝐻
Yep.
and Chavo's Lieutenant Loco, for no other reason than the fact that that flows, right? I'm Corporal Cajun for no other reason than CC, Corporal Cajun. That rolls off the tongue. So, Hammer had that little bit of a stoner look to him and was a little bit of a stoner in real life. So he was Private Stash. Ha ha ha, we totally get it. You've got a private stash. No, he had a problem with the fact that he was the lowest ranking person in the group.
Oh my God.
That's the way that he read that, right? So he went to them and he goes, no, you need to call me Major Stash, just so he could have a higher rank.
Wow.
That was the straw that broke the camel's back for us. We're not even maybe 2 weeks into this run, and we go up to Vince and we go up to Ed, and we said, "Look, we don't think it's going to work out with Hammer. We don't want him to be part of the group. The rest of us, the three of us, me, Chavo, and Hugh, great chemistry. We're workhorses. We love working with each other. We love being around each other. We love traveling. You know what? But we recognize that you want us to have a heavy. You want us to have a big man in the group. We need somebody to round off the group, who acts just like us and has the same attitude and the same working ability, and that you're not really doing anything with Jerry Toot. How about bringing him in?" And at that point, he had been with Berlin, but they had taken Berlin off of television. And you had Alex Wright was Berlin, and Jerry Toots, this big 6'10" guy, that's the Wall. You got
Yeah.
Berlin and the Wall. We go, look, he's already the Wall. Let's just call him Sergeant A Wall. So instead of being the Wall, he's gone A Wall, and we'll just bring him over on our side. And they go, yeah, sure, we're totally cool with that. And that's what brought Jerry into the group. Once we had that element, man, we felt we had great chemistry together. So that was a big win for us and a success for us. And the other thing we took great pride in was we took this ha ha, throwaway, funny bit of a gimmick that would have been nothing else other than one more segment on a Saturday Night Live skit and turned it into the fans getting behind us because our work in the ring still spoke for itself. And because of that, Jerry, big AWOL, he's able to parlay that into being the hardcore champion. Uh, Hugh is able to parlay that into being the United States champion. Chavo and I are able to parlay that into winning the tag team titles.
That's right. Yeah.
So
Which is huge.
we take great pride in that, and because of that, I think we were very underrated as a faction.
Love the theme song. I don't know why. I always love the Misfits in action. I thought
Yeah,
that was a great song.
you know what? We kind of went. We got with Jimmy on that, and my he asked us about some ideas. My thought in that was, what was the old Creedence Clearwater Revival song, like Run Through the Jungle or something that starts off with the helicopters in the background and stuff. We wanted that helicopter heavy, sound like we're about to land in the DMZ, sort of sound going on, and then the
Yeah,
Misfits
yeah.
in action. And that they actually recorded us doing that. That was us doing that in the back, the Misfits in action part.
Love that. That's so cool. And obviously, Jimmy Hart was like the master of theme music. And I don't know if everybody knows that, but yeah, he really was.
Yes, he was. Jimmy Hart is probably one of the most talented, legendary, iconic people I've ever been around to be the most humble person in the room. If you're ever around Jimmy, Jimmy is the most humble person in the room. Jimmy's attitude, you could see Jimmy Hart right now, and he'd act like he just got in the business a week ago and he's just proud to be here. And what an awesome person he is because of that.
Did you like that you guys were disbanded and you were honorably discharged? Did you like that?
To us, it was one more storyline. It was just, what's the story tonight, and we'll roll with it. And it was a slow roll. You could kind of feel it coming towards the end there, and had kind of outlived its usefulness, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it at that point. And to be honest with you, another element, a point of pride that I never thought about until this moment, John, that we're talking about it now, was really, it was probably about time, if for no other reason than the fact that I think that faction in the matches that Hugh had during that time elevated him up to a legitimate semi-main eventer, if not main event guy. You know,
Right. Like his feud with Lance Storm and the
yes,
Team Canada, and obviously him winning the U.S. title, which makes you number one contender for the world title, basically. So yeah, he got, quite a big push.
Yeah, I think so as well. And we were just, and again, we were just proud to be in the mix at that point, man. We really, truly were. I know I was. And to this point, to this day, I had so much fun during that time. If someone tried to pin me down, I probably liked creatively what I did for myself with the whole Ragin Cajun character and all the elements that went into that, because that's my own creation and that's more uniquely me and that's more true and genuine to who I am as a person. I probably like that character better, and I'm probably more comfortable being the Raging Cajun than I am being Corporal Cajun. But as far as an era of my career, that time in my career, I enjoyed more than any other.
After that, do they say what you're going to be doing after that, or they tell you, "Hey, you're going back to the cruiserweight division"? Like, what do they tell you, or they don't tell you anything as far as when you get honorably discharged?
So here's the thing with that is it was kind of a mixed bag. And what I mean by a mixed bag is this. For a minute there, we were sort of in limbo where we were originally told that we were still sort of MIA, but we were out of the camouflage and back to being regular wrestlers. So there was probably a very short period of less than a month where I actually had a pair of wrestling tights, long tights like I would wear when I was doing the cruiserweight stuff, that had the MIA logo on the side. Which, fun fact, I drew from scratch. I created that MIA
Oh,
logo from scratch. Yeah.
awesome!
Yeah. I created that whole thing. And in fact, if you look at Chavo's run in WWE, he had like a tribal symbol on the side of his tights. That was my design that was behind the MIA lettering that we used in MIA. So I took the MIA part of it off, the letterings off of it, took just that tribal design, passed it on to Chavo, and Chavo utilized that design later on in his career. And so at first we just had tights made that were still MIA, but we were wrestlers, and it was a weird transition period. And then suddenly it sort of went away, as much not for storyline purposes as it was for political business purposes. And what I mean was, it paralleled with the tug of war that was going on between Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo for who are we sending home and who's going to be in charge. And it was touch
Right.
and go there for a while. It just really was. And I guess that's the nature of the wrestling business. And again, I was so immature in the business at the time from a business perspective that I didn't see it from that angle. I just saw it like, all right, whoever's in charge, and then whatever they tell me to do this week, that's what I'm going to do. But those things went kind of hand in hand. And the end of my WCW run really came when we were kind of still in that transition. And I'll never forget this because I'm an Alabama guy. And my last WCW match was at the Von Braun. It was a Thunder here for WCW in Huntsville, Alabama. And Eric was there. And the mood in the back was, the rumors had started circulating that WCW was going to get bought out, but it was almost an unspoken secret or an unspoken truth that everybody kind of knew it was going to be Eric buying the company with a group of investors. That's what was understood among the boys at the time.
Right. Right.
And it was so understood among the boys that Eric was kind of around backstage and de facto calling the shots. It was not unlike, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, it was similar to what we see right now, right? Like, for all intents and purposes, even though he hadn't been inaugurated yet, Trump is the president of the United States, right? He's won
Right.
the election. Joe Biden's kind of missing in action right now, and Trump's kind of doing what Trump is doing, and everybody's sort of falling in line, even though he hasn't officially been inaugurated yet. It was sort of the same way towards the end of WCW. Is you just kind of, it was understood that Eric's going to be back in charge. So, well, hey, whatever his proclivities are, we're going to kind of follow that. And I'll never forget, I was backstage. Eric was back there. He walks by, and keep in mind, I had not had much in our interaction with Eric at that point, in my career. And he walks by, and I knew I was wrestling that night. Scott Steiner, not Scott Steiner, Rick
Rick
Steiner.
Steiner.
Uh,
Yep.
I was wrestling Rick Steiner that night, and Eric walks by, and he just stops for a second. He looks at me, and he goes, "Cut your hair, you look goofy," and keeps walking. And I'm thinking, this dude's never really said that much to me. And when he chooses to finally say something to me, he says something like that. I was almost offended by it.
Right.
But then again, I'm from the old school where, look, if you're my boss, you're my boss. And you know better than I do. And so if you tell me to cut my hair, you're signing my paychecks, okay. Whatever you say. And then he comes back to me, to his credit, and I still am so grateful for this to this day. He comes back to me maybe a half an hour later. He pulls me to the side. First one-on-one conversation I really had with Eric Bischoff, and he goes, "Look, I didn't mean for that to sound the way that it sounded. It probably came off a little harsh." He goes, "Look, here's my idea." He goes, you've been wearing that T-shirt with the MIA for the last, year or whatever. You a little pudgy around the waist, a little thicker than you were before. Why don't we send you home? You lose some weight. You lean down, look really, really good. Cut your hair to give you a little bit of a fresh look. Bring you back, and we'll make you cruiserweight champion and give you a little bit of a run. And at the same time, what they were trying to accomplish, they felt like some of the bigger name guys that were just known as being brawlers and monsters before Vince Russo came in had been delegitimized a little bit by the way they'd been used. They'd
Yeah.
been so used as an entertainment purpose. Specifically, let me just cut to the chase. Someone like a Rick Steiner, who was known for being this tough guy that nobody wants to get in the ring with and nobody wants to mess with, is now dancing with Tank Abbott. They saw that as hurting him overall as a character, and they wanted to bring some serious elements back to him. So they said, two birds, one stone. We'll put you in the ring with Rick Steiner. He'll annihilate you. He'll look like the monster he should be again. We'll take you out on a stretcher, put you in an ambulance. They did the whole ambulance scene, the whole deal on Thunder. That writes me off TV for about 4 weeks. I'll go home. I'll lean down, really, really tighten up, come back with a fresh, tight look, good look, put the cruiserweight title on me, let me have a little bit of a run and a little bit of a push. And so that's the way it was sold to me. And then while I was off TV, maybe 2 weeks later, the company's bought out.
Yeah, I was gonna say, boom, that next
Yeah,
month, the next couple weeks, it's gone, and
it's gone.
obviously Vince buys WCW, he kills it, and you go to HWA and all that other stuff. But the thing I really wanted to ask you was obviously who killed WCW, that documentary that came out, but who in your mind, who killed WCW? I know they sold and there just might be a little controversy about the deal that who they sold to and the deal that they made and how cheap they got it, but who killed WCW really?
I think really when it comes down to it, a bunch of corporate executives killed WCW. That's really what I think it comes down to. I think that when you start doing business on that level, and when I say that level, I'm talking specifically Time Warner and I'm talking specifically AOL at the time. I think they perceived themselves as needing a strong identity from a business standpoint to step into whatever void in the industry they're trying to fill and whatever it is they're trying to be. And I think they wanted to be that big media conglomerate. And they did not see in their mind at that time something like a WCW or any other sports teams for that matter that Turner had his fingers in at the time, because it wasn't just WCW. They didn't see that as part of the equation. In fact, they saw that as a detriment. They saw that as something that took credibility away from them overall as a media empire, that they wouldn't be taken as seriously with this wrestling company under their umbrella as they would if they were specifically streamlined as AOL Time Warner, a media company. And I think once that decision was made, then it was just a question of how it was going to go down. Because, you look at the ratings of WCW, you look at the revenue of WCW, and I know I wasn't privy to all those things, and I'm not going to sit here and try to speak with the expertise of somebody that was there in the mix like an Eric Bischoff's going to do on his podcast. I'm not going to pretend I'm in the know when I'm not. But I know I have a lot of common sense and I've lived a lot of life, and I've seen business and how things shake down and how people move in those circles. And you can't tell me that WCW was not still a viable brand. It was not still a viable company. The way I compare those things are, for instance, even people want to say we had a bloated budget or some wrestlers were overpaid and some talent was was given so much leeway and so much money and everything else that it couldn't exist or it couldn't succeed. Man, I go, you look at somebody that has a down year in the NFL. You know, like way back then, I can remember in the late '90s when WCW was blowing and going. The Cincinnati Bengals were terrible, right? But the
Yep.
Cincinnati Bengals are still part of the NFL, and as part of the NFL, they still have a league minimum. And I think the league minimum for the guy riding the bench at the time was a couple of $100,000 a year, right? And you're going to have a quarterback. You're going to be paying a couple of million a year too, and you're drawing what, a couple of thousand people a week to your games that are buying tickets. Dude, we were drawing that almost every night still. Even on our bad nights, we're drawing a couple of thousand people. And when we were really blowing and going, we're drawing 10,000 or 20,000. And you're going to tell me we're not drawing that kind of revenue? And we're doing that not one game once a week, 16 weeks out of the year, but we're doing that 3 or 4 times a week, year round. And we're on the road 300 days out of the year. And I can guarantee you this, guys that you were used to seeing on a regular basis on television that would have been mid card or lower or something like that, they're probably not making what the league minimum was in NFL. So
Yep.
for all the people, I guess a better way of saying it is this: for all the people that you may have thought were overpaid in WCW, that you thought were making a million plus or something, I guarantee you there were probably at least a half dozen talent that were good, legitimate wrestlers that had name value to them that were making less than 200,000 a year.
It's one of those things when you look at it, and obviously the Nitro book, if you've seen that by Guy Evans,
Yes.
a buddy of mine,
Yeah, guys, tremendous good friend of mine. Great
yeah,
guy.
great explanation in the book. Obviously,
Yes.
it's about 500 pages, and there's a lot to go in. But I mean, they're counting at different things, massaging the accounting. They're moving this as a loss, which is legal, and you could do it. And Dick
Absolutely.
Cheatham, who worked for WCW, explained it too. But yeah, there was a lot more to play than just, hey, this was bad creative, and they're done.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there's a lot of crossover too for all the other media stuff. And I also think that they were trying to I cook the books. I don't mean that in a disparaging way, and I certainly don't mean that in the legal terms of somebody's doing something mischievous or doing something illegal. But I do think that they're, like you said, massaging those numbers in a way so that the
Yeah.
elements of the business that they were most interested in looked really, really good when they go to do that merger with AOL, as opposed to let the wrestlers take the loss because they're looked at as being the redheaded stepchild anyway.
Yep. Yep. It just, I don't know, one of those crazy things where so many people all just kind of wondering and curious, like who killed WCW? Well, it looks like WCW killed itself from within because Brad Siegel,
Absolutely.
etc., killed it.
Yeah, I think that that's 100% right. And it's and I also say that too from the perspective of there's no doubt in my mind that AEW, to put it in modern terms, has to be a pretty healthy company now, right? I'm not in the mix like I used to be in the mix, but I also have seen enough of their product to, you're not going to convince me that Tony Khan's a complete idiot, right? And you're not going to convince me that the people that he's surrounded by would allow him to just throw bad money after bad money after bad money just to
Right.
keep playing this game like a lot of people like to throw out there on social media and that sort of thing. So when I look at what the wrestlers are making now from a salary perspective, people don't just give that money away. You're only paying someone a value based on what value you think you can get a return on, right? It's a return on your investment. It's ROI all day long. And obviously, no matter how you break it down or how you try to explain it, the ROI has to be greater than what you're paying out, or it's not a viable business. And if AEW can be the viable business that it is now with the fans that it draws to its shows, you can't convince me that WCW was too far gone and it was never going to bounce back.
Right. I totally agree. I'm right there
Yeah.
with you. As we head towards the wind down here, we head towards the finish. What is next for Lash? Will you get in the ring again? What is going on? What's next?
Well, I don't know if you heard or not, John Poz, but I did have a match last year. I had the first match in close to 15 years. It
Joey
was
Janela.
Joey Janela, man, and I was shocked at how well it went. I felt really, really good about it. I came out on the losing end, but the stuff that I always did in the ring, I was still able to do. I'm sure I was maybe a step slower than I was in my 20s, but at the same time, I didn't feel like anything was holding me back, and I didn't feel constrained by what I was able to pull off. And I'm in as good a shape now as I was then physically. I don't have any lingering injuries. I feel like I have a better mind for the business than I've ever had before in my life. I say all that to say this. I do think that I have something to contribute in the wrestling arena still, whether it's in ring, out of ring, creative, helping people come up with ideas, anything like that. And I would love to be a part of wrestling. Look, you're not going to be that good at something and have that without having a passion for it. You know, it's like I said earlier, by the way, I'm not an arrogant person at all. You're not going to find a lot of stuff where I'm putting myself over online, and I don't post a lot of old clips of myself to try to build myself up because I try not to be an arrogant person. But I am a confident person. You know, everybody's got a few things in this world that they're good at. Yeah, I was a good wrestler. I was reminded of that when I wrestled Joey Janela. I had forgotten that when I left WWE, and I felt kind of defeated, and I felt like the world was against me a little bit in the wrestling circles. And, you know, I felt a little discouraged by how my wrestling career wound down. I was so proud of that match I had with Joey Janela because I felt like I went into GCW and I was able to walk back out on my terms. I was able to go into that match on my terms and walk out of that match on my terms to such an extent that if that's the last match I ever have, I'm okay with that. I'm good with that. But with that being said, I think I have a lot more left to offer. And there were plenty of wrestlers in WCW then and WWE. There's plenty of wrestlers now in AEW, WWE, GCW that may be greater than I am, but I'm still a great wrestler. And I think I still have a lot to offer. And you're not going to be that good at something and not have a passion for it. So I still have a great passion for it. But I've also built up this thing with my caricature that I'm equally passionate about.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so I've had a few calls since that match with Joey Janela. I think I surprised a few people. A lot of promoters called me up and asked me about doing other shows, and there were a couple of other opportunities, and even got a little informal call from up north, for lack of a better way of putting it, you know, without going into great detail. And I've told them the exact same thing I'll tell you. The older I get, the more I play this game of life with my cards face up. I'm about as transparent of a person as you're going to find. I tell you exactly how I feel about things and exactly how I see things, for better or for worse. And here's the truth: whatever my value may or may not be in wrestling, I would love to be out there in that space. I've built my wrestling, my caricature business up to an element now to where I'm on the road as much as I was at my peak in wrestling on television, and I'm making as much money off of my drawings and off of my caricature as I was at my peak in wrestling. So
Nice.
whoever comes courting, you know, and I hope people do, but whoever does think that Lash Leroux has something to offer still in professional wrestling, if anybody wanted to come and book me or court me, they have to at least match or better what I'm making drawing. Otherwise, why would I put myself, you know, at risk of getting
Yeah.
injured to get in the ring if I can't do at least as well as I do off my drawing? Because I'm not at a point in my life where I'm going to have matches just to stroke my ego. If I need to be reminded that I can have good wrestling matches, hey, YouTube's full of them. I can go back and watch some old footage, you
Yeah.
know. But I would love to be a part of a company or be a part of another show or another event if I'm compensated accordingly and somebody sees the value in that and wants to bring me out. Let's talk, man. And I'm open to any ideas. I'm open to any opportunities, and I'll listen to anything.
Love that. Where can everybody find you and follow you?
All right, man. So the only social media I'm really on is I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm on LinkedIn under Lash Leroux simply because a lot of the conferences and companies that I work for, and a lot of my clients are on LinkedIn. I'm on X at Lash Can Draw. because I could draw figuratively and literally in the wrestling space or outside of it.
Love
But
it.
those are the only two real spots, man, on social media. Maybe I'll have a bigger footprint in the new year. I don't know. But those seem to be enough for me to handle right now for me to stay booked full time. And I'll be following that up with possibly a little bit of a appearance at a wrestling event towards the end of January in Huntsville, Alabama for that Top Guy weekend.
Awesome. That sounds great. Lash, thank you so much for all the time. Really appreciate it.
And Paz, it's always a pleasure, man. I love hanging out with you. I love getting catch up, and I love just getting to say Merry Christmas.